Alright, everybody. If you guys have watched me for any amount of time, or if you've just followed online politics for a while, then you've got to be familiar with one of the most notorious, dishonest, clickbaiting, and successful rage-baiting grifters on the entirety of YouTube. That is, of course, the Critical Drinker. His entire personality is having, I think it's a Scottish accent, which he, maybe he's really drunk and is actually an alcoholic, in which case he's made it his entire personality, and is literally so drunk when making his videos that he's slurring his words, or it's a character, in which case, playing a character who's always so drunk they slur their words is just kind of sad. I don't know. But that's not even the real problem I have with Critical Drinker. If he wasn't an awful guy who makes awful content, I genuinely don't think that would bother me as much. The fact is that he's really one of the most dishonest argumenters of anything online. Let me give you guys a good example. We've covered a few fantastic videos from a channel called Pillar of Garbage in the past, who's done great, really nitty-gritty breakdowns on the way that content creators like the Critical Drinker and the Critical Drinker himself do their grift. And what they do is something that I've personally named the sinking ship method. They find something, usually a popular piece of media that has a pre-existing strong, large fan base, that's generally getting a big flood of new audience into it at the same time. But at the same time, there's for some reason, anger emerging in that audience. Let's use Warhammer as a good example, or sinking ship spotting, sorry. That's what it's called, sinking ship spotting. What's a good example, actually? D&D, I think. I don't know if you guys play D&D, I know some of you guys do, but from what I've heard, Wizards of the Coast, the company that, owns D&D, has been making some awful business decisions lately. Some that have really, really upset longtime fans of the products the company produces. And yeah, the community hates Wizards of the Coast. This pre-existing rage, and the fact that D&D is entering a bit of a controversial period, and the fact that it's also hitting its peak in popularity, in that it's the most relevant it's probably ever been right now. More people than ever are getting into D&D. It's becoming kind of just a normal thing that groups of friends do, not like that weird, nerdy tabletop game that nerds play, right? Everybody knows what D&D is, and everybody knows someone that plays D&D now. And despite that, there is more anger towards the company producing D&D products than ever. And because of that, the chuds have jumped onto Wizards of the Coast, claiming, oh, are you upset at, here's a list of non-political things you're upset at Wizards of the Coast for? Well, do you think it's maybe more than a coincidence that as all these changes happened, the company also started to virtue signal progressive values more often? Don't you think that must be connected? And so then they get a bunch of people who are already mad at Wizards of the Coast for something like hiring the Pinkertons on a random gamer for having unauthorized access to a magic card or something. And then you got people who are mad at that company for that, believing the company is controlled by some woke agenda that is making all these horrible decisions happen. And somehow issues like calling the Pinkertons on someone for having a magic card they shouldn't have becomes not as big of an issue as, I guess they released a book recently where they refer to some stereotypes in the D&D stories from early on, earlier D&D versions pulled from real-life stereotypes, and just simply said, some of these are offensive, we understand that, they're a product of the time, sorry, but we have to preserve this because that, this is the true D&D as it was. People got mad at that more than they got mad at Wizards of the Coast hiring the fucking Pinkertons. It's wild. It's pretty wild. Despite that, the Critical Drinker, probably the biggest content creator who grifts off of this method. And one of the things he loves to do is lie to his audience. Just explicitly lie to his audience. The vast majority of people who watch the Critical Drinker's content do not watch the content that he is talking about. When he talks about a show or a movie and how it's bad, the people that watch his videos are watching those videos to get an opinion on that media that they can parrot and pretend they've seen that media themselves and have a self-made opinion that is negative about it. They don't want to go and watch whatever it is they've been told is going to be bad and have been told they're supposed to hate. But they need reasons, things they can say about it that are reasons to hate it, right? And this has happened with countless properties I'm sure many of you can think of, but the critical drinker specifically is who I want to talk about today, and how he does it is what I want to talk about today, because it's not just Pillar of Garbage, me, and a few other YouTubers who are making videos calling out the blatant grift of the critical drinker. We've now got a new content creator who has joined the circuit, the Birdman. The in the name spelled with a 3, actually. God, my nose is itching now. Now, I swear I've watched videos from him before, and I could have sworn they were not exactly left-leaning, but maybe I'm confusing him for someone else. I may be mistaken. I am subbed to the channel, so it means at some point I watched this channel before and liked the content, but they're a pretty big channel, and they uploaded a video called Exposing the Grift, the Critical Drinker. This is a 3-day-old video, and it's doing pretty well, and this is a pretty large channel. Now, we've watched a few videos that are like this in the past, and I really do enjoy them, as you can imagine, so I'm quite excited to see if this video makes any new arguments or exposes any new things about the critical drinker. Birdman is the CinemaSins dude. The Birdman spelled with a 3. Oh, he makes the videos dunking on CinemaSins. Ah, yes, I remember. Okay, yeah. He's the one who makes, like, the CinemaSins response videos. No wonder I'm subbed. I really hate CinemaSins, so that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. There we go. I really, really hate CinemaSins. I do not like that channel. It is some of the laziest, low-effort, like... It's not even that it's lazy and low-effort. It's lazy, low-effort content that's designed to give people talking points they can use to pretend like they have an original opinion on something. That's really what upsets me about the audience that consumes this type of content at the end of the day, is that so many of the people that I see talking about, like, insert show that's been deemed woke and bad, like, they complain about it, and I can tell from their complaints they haven't seen the show, and that they're just repeating complaints about it they heard from a YouTuber. That shit really frustrates me. The director of Skull Island years ago called out the critical drinker, or was it CinemaSins? Could be referring to either. Probably CinemaSins. Anyway, let's hop into the video. It starts with a quote. If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. Isn't that like a Hitler quote? To be fair, you know, that is the motto that Hitler lived by. Yeah, fucking Nazi. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
The illusory truth effect is a phenomenon that was first detailed in a 1977 study. It's the inclination of people to believe false information after being exposed to that false information many times.
It goes even further than this, too. I love this study, and I know the specific well, maybe not this specific study, but it's one that's been repeated, and I've heard the results of several of the, like, at the very least, similar or identical studies. That's one of my favorite studies, the fact that just you can repeat false info and people will believe it. My favorite, though, were the studies they did that found that people will commit to belief false info that they've been told is false. People would so much rather believe anything about a topic, like even pretend to have an opinion on the topic, rather than admit or look like they don't know enough to have an opinion on it. That they will hear something false about a topic, know that it's false, be told, hey, by the way, this is a false thing, everything you see in this documentary is fake, and then show them the documentary, and they will repeat things they learned in that documentary, despite having just the preface to the information being that it was all false and that they shouldn't believe any of it. They'll still commit it to memory because if it was a gap in their knowledge they had before, they might as well believe something false than nothing at all. people will actually do this, and there are countless studies that show that people do this. So it's even more powerful of a human tendency than this suggests. You don't even have to repeat something false over and over again. You can tell them, hey, this is completely wrong, and then give them a wrong opinion that they know is wrong about something that they don't have the experience to have an original opinion on, and they will assimilate that false opinion they know is false just to have an opinion. I have autism, and I've always hated this trait about neurotypical people. Maybe I'm autistic, and that's why this bothers me so much. But those are the people that flock to the type of content that the Critical Drinker guy makes, and like CinemaSins makes, like the types of YouTubers who make opinions on media for you to pretend are your own, basically. That shit just bothers me. There's a big difference, by the way, between actual review and critique of media and this like weird 24/7 cycle of here's what you need to be a part of the dislike bomb against, here's what you need to be in favor of grift that these YouTubers do. Because a lot of what they do is encouraging their fans to mass review bomb something and then make videos about how the reviews are so low and how they were right all along because the reviews are so low. What really impresses me is Rings of Power, despite all of the review bombing, has a 7.6 on IMDb. 7.6 audience score, despite being one of the most review-bombed shows on the entire internet. That means the people who like the show and are leaving positive reviews are leaving some very positive reviews. If they're if they're actually able to get a higher average, like a pretty high average score to come out of a massive dislike or review bomb campaign. I'm excited for the new episode of Rings of Power. I haven't seen it yet. The one that came out last night. I need to watch it after stream.
Repeated exposure to lies caused the false information to feel familiar to the participants. In that study, they found out that the more familiar the information feels, the more likely that familiarity overpowers a person's rationality. In other words,
this is also true. This is the repetition aspect, where at a certain point, man, you know what happens so often? How many times have you seen a thing or a content creator, like how many times have you seen a content creator get false allegations over and over again because they're always in drama and they get debunked, but then eventually, despite there never having actually been any true allegations, people just get soured on the taste of that creator because they've just heard repeating over and over again things they know are false about them. But at a certain point, it's hard to not associate those things with that creator. I've seen that happen with a lot of YouTubers. For a long time, that was Dream. For a long time, that was big time Dream, where there was nonstop false allegation after false allegation. And then, yes, eventually there was real allegations that came out. But even before that, everyone was already prone to be like, yeah, he's probably a predator. Because at this point, there was just so many allegations, and even though everyone knew that, or most people knew that there were none fully proven true, and that most of them had been, if not all of them, had been debunked at the time, people just still had this, there was just still this trend, this repetition of the claim, and people ran with it. It became a meme to believe it, even if you didn't actually, right? Yeah, it's the same as JD Vance. A good example as well is the JD Vance couch thing, right? Where a good amount of people probably really believe JD Vance fucked a couch, even though he never actually did. It's just become a meme that people repeat, and he's never going to be able to live it down.
The more you hear something, the more it feels right. Further studies showed that the illusory truth effect could even make people have false memories, and that people with names that were easier to pronounce were more readily believed by participants of the study.
I remember, dude. Oh my god. Here's a really good example. I think Rings of Power is a good example of this. Rings of Power was a show that everybody thought was going to be awful, including myself. I had no excitement for it before it came out. In fact, there was so much hate for it that people were just making things up about the show, and that headline would make the rounds, and people would believe it hook, line, and sinker. And even though it didn't end up being true, in fact, 99% of the things people said about the Amazon Lord of the Rings show, as it was called back then, didn't end up being true. But despite that, there had been so much prep to hate it before it even came out that like people were just unwilling to walk it back, right? When it ended up not being the case. A really good example of this was the fake intro for Rings of Power. The claim that the intro is like this black void with the characters as the camera like pans through like some cheap soap opera thing. Didn't end up being true, but a bunch of viral tweets spread that claim around, and that prepped up a bunch of hate for the show before it even came out. The perception that it was cheaply made. When that criticism, despite it having always been unfounded because it's the most expensive show ever made, carried forward, and now you've got people trying to zoom in on random scenes and be like, look how cheap these costumes look, and it's like, what are you pointing to that looks cheap here? What are you pointing? He's like, this. It's like, what? What is cheap here? It's the most expensive show ever made. Like, there's nothing cheap about this. You're just trying to follow through with a criticism from before the show came out that was based on a false premise. And so that trend, granted, I have a bias there, right? But like that trend is so fucking common, dude. Oh my God. Where someone, like a really popularly believed false thing starts a narrative, that false thing gets shot down, but then the narrative survives and they find reasons to justify the narrative, even if it means making up examples. And I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of people have had essentially false memories implanted in them about media they have consumed by these content creators. It's a real human phenomenon where if you just repeat, it's what gaslighting is. It's gaslighting. It's content creators gaslighting their audience into thinking a thing that they might have experienced was different than it was. And for the people who never went out of their way to experience that media, well, then you can just lie to them about whatever you want. What's cheap about Rings of Power are its criticisms. Yeah. A lot of people, I mean, like, there's criticisms for Rings of Power. Not really, I don't really consider them criticisms, more as like a fun way to analyze the show, is to be like, oh, they changed the lore a little here, or if they like completely bend, or if they like bend the lore, or if they get something really right, that's always fun. And if they reference something that's like a deep cut, that's always fun. Rings of Power watch party when? I don't know. Maybe we could alternate between Korra and Rings of Power. We could do a Rings of Power watch party tonight. I don't know. I'm feeling... Yeah, we'll do a poll later on in the stream. Because Rings of Power Season 2 did start.
This is a powerful psychological tool that grifters employ on their audience, and its effects are seen every single day. How many times have you heard vaccines cause autism or go woke, go broke? There is a reason these people repeat these mantras over and over, even in the face of conflicting evidence, and that's because repeating false information makes it more likely to be believed. Here's a network graph of the phrase go woke, go broke on Twitter from August 2022 to February 2023. The blue represents left-leaning users, while the red represents right-leaning users. The irony of the shape formed by right-wingers isn't lost on me. A literal dickhead. This brings me to the subject of this video.
Wait, he's not wrong. The trend literally... My God, it's a little chode.
The shape formed by right-wingers isn't lost on me. A literal dickhead. This brings me to the subject of this video. Will Jordan, aka The Critical Drinker. Tell me, how many times have you heard him say, "The message"? What's up, everyone? It's your friendly neighborhood Birdman here. Today, I'm going to question why people believe this grifter and show you precisely why you shouldn't.
God, this is so cathartic because the critical drinker is a coward. I really hate cowards. People who are too bitch-made to admit what they believe and to stand by their ideology. The critical drinker is a fucking coward who is too much of a bitch to stand by his conservative beliefs, so instead he uses insane amounts of anecdote and like dog whistling and like buzzwords to signal to a conservative audience that he believes what they believe and he's against what they're against, while also avoiding saying things explicitly that make it easy to call out the conservative thought process in his content, right? He'll say, oh, they're trying to spread the message. And so, like, you can ask him, what is the message? And he can respond with whatever he wants. You can't really criticize him by saying, oh, he said he has a problem with this gay or black character in the movie, which he does. He does have a problem with gay or black characters in movies, but he always calls their inclusion something like the message, which is grifters speak for progressive values in media.
Due to the kinds of people this video is sure to attract, I think I need to put my cards on the table. Firstly, I am not a political type. I rarely, if ever, bring up politics, and when I do, it's usually to make fun of them, left or right. For this behavior, I have been
Yeah, I've never really known this content creator to be like explicitly lefty. But the fact that he covers the fact is, though, he's like an anti-grifter content creator. This guy calls out like CinemaSins, Critical Drinker, like these YouTubers who upload schlock that's just meant to fuel the algorithm, right? That's what he calls out, like the grifters. And while there's not just grifters on the right, don't get me wrong, there's grifters on the left, there's grifters in the center, there's apolitical grifters like CinemaSins. Generally speaking, if your job is to call out grifters online, you're gonna default to seeming a little bit more progressive, at least. They do say, like, reality has a liberal bias, so more reasonable content creators tend to have a perception of being progressive because they care about reality, and that tends to lock them out of many conservative worldviews.
Routinely called right-wing and left-wing by people who make politics their entire identity. My position is that political folk are mirror images of each other, participating in the Spider-Man meme, where they blame each other for doing exactly what they themselves are doing, something the drinker is heavily guilty of. I think it's silly to adhere to political sides because at some point in time, you're going to have to defend nonsense to maintain the integrity of being on that side.
This is a really good example. I mean, I don't want to shit on this video because I think it's really good, but this is a good example of like a very out of touch take politically. But I also don't disagree with him. So on one hand, if you're somebody whose political beliefs are that you're always left, and that no matter what, if there are people on the left saying a thing or doing a thing or calling out a thing, by default you side with those that you politically align with. You don't even think about it, you just align with them, and you are afraid to criticize or admit fault when a mistake is made. That is a pretty common thing on both political sides. For the right, it's basically, more often than not, the bog standard. Like, we can't pretend like the left and right are equally bad in this respect. Let's be real. But to be fair, that does exist on the left. There are a lot of people, even in my own audience in the past, that have gotten upset because I dare to criticize something they agree is bad because the person who did it is someone they like on the left. Hassan, for example. And so, yeah, I do think that while the take that, like, if you are a political person, then that's cringe, is bad, I also don't know if he fully believes that at the same time. Like, I feel like if I talked to the Birdman, like, one-on-one in private and was like, do you really think that people who care, like, about, say, like, social justice, not, like, who are crazy, like, what you might call an SJW, but, like, people who actually are, like, locked in on trying to make the world a better place, like, they've got, you know, sort of ambitions to see America or the world become better for people in it. Like, I don't think he would say that's bad. I think he's probably referring to people who are, like, who come off online as, like, right-wing psyops. There are people who are left-wing, who are real lefties online, who are so crazy and so wacky and so weird that we get together and we're like, are we sure this isn't a conservative who's made, like, like an alt account? But then again, you know, Birdman does come off as more of like a griller, right? Just kind of a normal guy, not really locked in on politics. So maybe the perception for him is that, like, there's a pretty equal amount of Spider-Man pointing meme on both sides.
The only side I'm on is reason, logic, facts, science, and math. So believe me, when I criticize this very obviously right-wing chud, I'm doing so out of the spirit and integrity of unbiased media discourse, which is something I care about deeply. Less important, but still worth a mention.
I also feel it's way more effective, to be honest, if someone who might come off as more conservative-leaning is calling this content out. Because prior, it's always been definitely, like, left-leaning figures that have called out the Critical Drinker and the other grifters in his sphere. But, like, at the end of the day, my biggest problem with the Critical Drinker isn't even really his politics, because it's really hard to tell what his politics are outside of vaguely conservative. It's the fact that he's a coward who won't stand by his beliefs, but uses the audience and the belief system that audience knows he's dog whistling is having to make money. It's a very cowardly way to profit off of being a political figure, but then at the same time shield yourself from criticism for having any actual political beliefs by being too much of a coward to admit them. It's a really coward, like, maybe I'm especially pissed off by it because I am a political content creator who has to every day deal with backlash for any political value I have. Like, if I'm pro-gay people, pro-trans people, I get nonstop shit for that. The critical drinker gets to be anti-gay people and anti-trans people and largely avoid criticism for that because bro just refers to it as the message. And homophobes and transphobes know exactly what that means. They get the message in the word the message when he says that. But it's not really something you can explicitly criticize without looking crazy to the grillers in his audience. But then again, if someone like the Birdman who's not super into politics is calling it out and recognizes the bullshit, maybe it is more obvious than I thought.
I'm not doing this out of jealousy or an attempt to clout chase. I've been calling out a much bigger YouTuber for nearly 7 years. For me, this is simply calling out another bad critic. That out of the way, it's difficult to know where to even start with this guy. He is absolutely rich with misinformation, outright lies, and baffling takes that don't stand up to even an ounce of scrutiny. In my last video, I played an excerpt from his infamous Across the Spider-Verse video.
Also, I can't shake the feeling that the script is doing everything in its power to play down Peter Parker, like it's afraid the audience will somehow start rooting for him over Miles if he's shown to be too capable and confident. The first movie portrayed him as an aging...
You'll notice, by the way, start rooting for him over Miles. As if it's a contest. Like, what? Like, what? There's no contest in this movie against between Peter Parker and Miles Morales. These guys have been desperately trying to push this idea that Miles Morales isn't Spider-Man and that Peter Parker is the only real Spider-Man. It's been one of their, like, ongoing things. And you can just tell in the way they speak about Miles Morales and Peter Parker. It's like there's some rivalry that doesn't exist. Like, these characters in the canon do not have a rivalry. They don't hate each other. They're like uncle and, like, nephew type relationship, like a mentor, like almost familial because they get that close because, like, Peter's a bit of a, like, older sort of, like, guiding figure for him in the world of, like, being a superhero, being Spider-Man specifically. It's so bizarre, you know, like, you can tell that there's just so much scorn in the framing. This video, you can already tell from one snippet, this video was for people who had not seen Spider-Verse.
Burned out loser who only redeems himself at the end, while the second film morphs him into a bumbling, hapless father in a pink bathrobe who for some reason keeps taking his baby along on life-threatening adventures despite having a perfectly capable mother at home to look after it. Is this some weird attempt to mock and belittle the Spider-Man that most people know and love, who incidentally just happens to be the only straight white man in the entire...
You'll also notice, by the way, that in the second Spider-Verse movie, Peter Parker isn't miserable and wanting to die, and in the first movie, he is. So the critical drinker's point here is in the second movie, which they had their big anti-woke brigade against, because back when the first Spider-Verse came out, we were in, like, an era of progressive politics online kind of flourishing, and so you didn't have as many, like, oh, new thing coming out, entire internet community shitting on it, right? That really started to butt up more back into popularity around 2020, 2021, really. So yeah, like, he's framing it as though in the second movie he's a loser and the animators and the writers hate him, when in reality he's happy in the second movie. He's miserable in the first. He's like a divorced, middle-aged, sad dude in the first, who's, like, not very good at being Spider-Man anymore, as, like, compared to how he used to be. This video is so for people who have not seen the Spider-Verse movies. It's for people who want to pretend they've seen them and have actual opinions they came up with originally for why they don't like it. Because a lot of the people who like this content are, I'm going to say it, they're racist. They hate Miles Morales. They think the movie's woke because it has a black person in it, and they don't want to watch it, and they want to pretend like they watched it, and they have non-racist criticisms for it. So that's really the line for a lot of these viewers of, like, the Critical Drinkers content.
Our movie? I don't know, man. It just kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth, that's all.
The first thing you'll notice if you've seen that movie is that he's just blatantly incorrect. Peter B. Parker is not the only straight white male in the film. In fact...
Oh, I didn't even pick... Oh my god, I didn't even pick up on that. Jesus. I forgot, because you got to remember, these guys they repeat, that's the entire point of this video, is they repeat lies so much that when I hear someone like the Critical Drinker or any conservative figure talk, sometimes I forget to pause and debunk what they're saying, because I'm so used to just hearing every word that comes out of their mouth being a lie, that it's like, well, I'm waiting for something more extreme, you know? Like, of course, what they just said, every word they say is a lie, so, like, I can't pause and respond to everything. Like, that's just a given, but I didn't even notice. I didn't even notice, because it was like, of course they say that the most prominent straight white character is the only straight white character, because they do that with every movie. It didn't even stand out to me. To be very clear, this is a regularly repeating trend in Critical Drinker videos and other YouTubers like him, where they refer to the most prominent straight white male character as the only straight white male character.
There are many of them, quite a few of them variants of Peter Parker himself. More importantly, there is a prominent supporting character that is the motivation for Spider-Gwen's entire arc in the film, Captain Stacy. The next issue you might see is the claim that Peter is being irresponsible by bringing his daughter on, and I quote, life-threatening adventures despite having a perfectly capable mother at home. Again, if you've watched this movie, you'd know that Peter's presence in the film was entirely to be a familiar face for Miles and to help him accept his canon event, not go on a life-threatening adventure.
You're the reason I had her, okay? I thought that if I did a decent job raising her, that there was a chance she was gonna turn out like you. And that got me excited because you are a wonderful person, and I like being around you.
Moreover, May Parker has superpowers, and her dad would likely be the only one in the relationship physically capable of corralling the clearly energetic child. What's more is he brought her to probably the safest environment she could possibly be, a hub with a million other superheroes. The less obvious observation is that Will—
and specifically Spider-Man, that would be like, oh, you're another Peter Parker's baby, I will make sure you don't get hurt, because for one, they're a Spider-Man who would never let a child get hurt. No Spider-Man variant would. And on top of that, like, they are, to a degree, like, that is a alternate version of their either future daughter or daughter. You know, they would, like, it. There's so many reasons why the criticisms, the weird nitpicks that people who want to pretend like racism isn't their reason for hating these movies come up with. Like, they're always this insane. Like, if it's a media that you haven't seen before and you hear a criticism like this from one of these people, assume it's just as much of a lie as the lies you've heard them say about media you have seen and you do know they were lying about. Because they're doing the same shit with stuff that you haven't seen that you don't know is false as well. And their talking points spread. Something that I've learned, especially in the last 4 or so years, is you just can't trust anyone else to tell you whether or not a piece of media is good. You really can't. You really can't. For one, your own preferences will always differ from a large portion of the majority. Two, hate is always going to spread and get more clicks and thus get around more online than positivity. It just will. Hate gets clicks. And so if anything is around and popular, assume you're going to see the hate over that thing before you're going to see someone talking about it positively. Because that's the case more often than not, even if that thing is good. And I've learned that even if I've heard nothing but bad things about a piece of media, unless I've heard very clear, well-substantiated reasons why, I should probably at least try to watch it myself and make my own opinion on it. And I've many times found that I'm really glad I went and tried it myself, because that shit is more often than not just there to prevent me from watching something I would have ended up liking. Xander Hall, in Confused, is the same CinemaSins, same one that goes roll credits after hearing the movie title? Yeah, that's the guy. Yeah.
Is a race baiter. The Spider-Verse films, while featuring a black protagonist, do not contain the themes of race relations. The more astute of you will then ask, well, why even bring that up at all?
Well, to be clear, to people like the Critical Drinker, and most notably the Critical Drinker's audience, the people who click his videos and pay his bills, they're mad about the simple presence of a black character. And not just that, many of them, that wouldn't even be enough for them, actually. Like, they're racist, a lot of them have some weird fucked up beliefs and whatnot, but that wouldn't be enough for them, a lot of them. The fact that Miles has any attention paid to his family and, like, his family dynamic, the fact that I think he's, like, half Hispanic, and so, like, his mom, I believe, speaks Spanish at some points, and he speaks Spanish back to his mom. Like, scenes like that make the viewers of the critical drinkers content, their blood fucking boils. They see it as virtue signaling, and they see it as like unnecessary inclusion for the sake of like being like, hey, look how woke our movie is. They see it like that. His mom's Puerto Rican. Well, yeah, they see it like that. Any like just the fact that Miles like speaks Spanish with his mom, I've seen that like complained about by chuds endlessly. So it's not, the movie doesn't do anything really to make like Miles' race an important part of the story or anything that you really should pay attention to. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. But to chuds, the fact that Miles is black and exists on screen and is black is a giant political statement. Like a giant political statement of like, yes, this new black character, new parentheses, black character is taking the place of a beloved, famous white superhero character. They are the ones that are trying to frame it in such a way that it seems like the movie is trying to make some giant statement about race when it's really not.
And therein lies the problem. Will's goal with many of his film reviews is to galvanize his mostly male, mostly white, and mostly straight audience around the idea that they are being attacked for being those three things. You do this often enough, and the audience will begin to believe it. Hence, that atrocious reading of Across the Spider-Verse. But it gets even better. Here he is doing the same thing to the Batman.
There seems to be a bit of a debate going on about whether or not this movie is woke, mainly because of the demographics of certain characters. And to be fair, there is a bit of evidence to support this claim. If I was a cynical man, I'd say it's kind of interesting that the rich, corrupt scumbags targeted by the Riddler all happen to be straight, white, middle-aged men, but hey...
Motherfucker has never... I don't read comics all that much. I've read a few comics in my time, but I'm not a comic reader. But do you want to know what I know is a recurring thing for the Riddler in the comics? Like, one of the most iconic Batman issues ever starts with an elevator full of rich white people, and a voice comes over the intercom in the elevator. It's the Riddler. And he gives them a riddle, and I think they get the riddle right, and then the Riddler kills them anyway by dropping the elevator down a shaft, and then there's like an explosive. It's a big explosion or something. That's the start of the issue. The Riddler is like, the most Riddler thing ever is for us to see him blowing up rich white people. That is what the Riddler does. That's what he does, okay? He riddles and he blows up rich white people. There is nothing more comic, original source material accurate Riddler than that. At least as far as I know. Like, it seems pretty legit.
Hey, I guess that's just a total coincidence.
Seriously, what the fuck does this movie have to do with race? He has straight white men in his mouth.
That's because they can't help but see that. It's what's so beautiful about them is that they claim that the creators of the movies, that the woke people the movies are supposedly made for, are the ones obsessed with race and politics. But they're the ones who say these things involving race that no normal person has thought of in regards to the movie. Like, no one watches a movie thinking about the race of the characters unless it has some extremely relevant, like, aspect of the story. Like, it's a historical piece or something. It has to do with, like, slavery or something, right? Like, in that case, yeah, the race of characters might be something you think about as an audience member if you're a normal person. But normal people don't watch movies and then think, oh, this character is that race. They did this violent thing to a character of that race, and then try to do like the mental calculus as to whether it's based because a white person hurt a black person, or if it's woke because a black person hurt a white person. Like, at the end of the day, you're the weird one obsessed with race if you're doing this like mental calculus in your head to figure out if the movie's trying to make some statement about white people being inferior because a black person or hell, in this case, the white person kills white people in the movie. That we're talking about white on white, non-race related, like violence more so based around class, like monetary class. And the dude is doing like, oh, well, did you notice that they were all white? It's like, no one normal noticed this.
So often, you'd think he was an escort. If he applied even a little of that gray matter, maybe he'd come to the conclusion that most rich people in our society tend to be white men.
Yeah.
The Riddler was going after police
Obviously,
officers and politicians, and again, in our society, they tend to be white. What Drinker is asking for here is diversity, but only amongst the villains of the film. Moreover, what he's conveniently leaving out is Riddler also attempted to assassinate the mayor-elect, a black woman. If all of this wasn't baffling enough, he himself states this film isn't about race.
And to be fair, Kravitz and Jeffrey Wright both do a great job with the roles they're given, and apart from one poorly judged line from Catwoman right at the end, race never really comes into the picture. So I guess what I'm saying here is that while the movie takes a few little stabs at modern day social issues, it really never dominates the narrative.
Does he even hear himself? Listen to this incredible leap in logic for Godzilla vs. Kong.
And oh look, Kong's been abducted from his homeland and taken across the ocean to America in chains. I mean, there's on-the-nose writing, and then there's next-level stuff like this.
God. Are you guys ready to see some woke shit? Are you guys ready to see some wokeness? Where's the original King Kong movie where they're bringing him on the boat? He was always chained up on the boat. I'm trying to find a shot. It's surprisingly hard to find screenshots of old movies, believe it or not. Well, I can't find it. Oh well. Yeah, the iconic shot of him is on top of the Empire State Building, I think, with the, like, shackles on him, reaching out at the plane. You know, you can see the shackles. Like, it's an iconic imagery for Kong to be chained up. And, like, what do you mean? Also, in that movie, he's not being... It's not even the original story they're adapting in that movie, by the way, in Kong versus Godzilla. He's being taken to be, like, protected from Godzilla. He's being transported, and they're really desperately trying to make sure he doesn't, like, wake up and stir too much and attract Godzilla. Like, that they're trying to protect him. They're taking him to Hollow Earth in that scene. They're taking him way up to the Arctic, I think, where there's, like, a hole down to Hollow Earth where he can live happily and safely from Godzilla trying to rip his ass open for existing. Yeah, it's like bro did not watch the movie and is desperate to make everything about race and how, like, there's some racial message there. The message is in everything, guys. You have to... I wake up, I see wokeness. I go to bed, I see wokeness. I eat breakfast, I see wokeness. I go to work, I see wokeness.
Wonder who you're supposed to sympathize with here.
Yes, Drinker just called African slaves apes and tried to frame it as the screenwriters doing so. That, my children, is what we in the English-speaking world call projection. And like almost every observation this guy makes, it's hilariously wrong. They're not even taking Kong to America.
Yep.
They're going to Antarctica in this scene. So not only did he get the scene wrong, he saw racial themes in a film where there are none because his brain immediately goes to black people when he sees an ape in chains. In my last video, I showed a tweet by Drinker that I thought made it painfully obvious what his positions on black people in
Guys, the Minecraft movie is woke. I cannot wait for us to have to cover anti-woke Minecraft movie videos. I think that'll be in the next stream. We'll be covering some of the anti-woke chuds coverage of the Minecraft movie and how they're going to call it woke for... The only thing they could possibly call it woke for is having a black character. I'm so ready, guys. I'm so fucking ready.
The media were. What I didn't account for was the insane mental gymnastics people would perform in order to deny that his post was racist in nature. So here's a tweet from a different person. If you're unfamiliar, this person is Nick Fuentes, a proud white supremacist. Sounds contradictory, I know, what with being a Mexican and having a name like Fuentes while being a white supremacist.
Well, the problem is that, I don't know why, but white people are not the best at being white supremacists for some reason. I don't know why, but historically it seems like Hispanic people make the best white supremacists. The leader of the Proud Boys currently, I think he might have gone to prison, but the last leader of the Proud Boys was Enrique Tarrio. The biggest Nazi figure in America is a guy named Nicholas J. Fuentes. I don't know, dude. Like, fuck, like, Cubans basically win the Republican Party win Florida for the Republican Party time and time again. Like, I'm gonna be honest. If there's going to be some like savior of the white race, probably gonna be a Mexican guy. To be honest with you, if like the fabled savior of the white race that white supremacists long for arrives, not gonna be a white guy. It's gonna be like a Hispanic dude, 100%. Turns out white people aren't even the best white supremacists.
But no one ever said white supremacists were intelligent. The point is, doesn't this tweet seem to be placing emphasis on a specific character in the Minecraft movie? I mean, now that I've told you...
Really, at the end of the day, though, the fact is that your race does not define your political beliefs, and some people, regardless of their race, can have some insane beliefs. Ones that are... that don't help them. I mean, tons of people are anti-vax, and this is only serving to hurt them. And in the same way, there are non-white people who believe in white supremacy despite the fact that white supremacy only hurts them. It's the same as any human being anti-vax. There are tons of people who will believe in things that believing in them and parroting those beliefs only hurt them. And they believe it full-heartedly. Their entire heart is in it.
This person is a white supremacist. It's obvious what his issue is, isn't it? So I'll ask again. What do you honestly think Will's problem with this image was? Do you really believe he's this upset about Jason Momoa's character here? Hold that thought. We're just getting started.
Conservatives do this thing where they'll sit in a room, they'll watch a girl and a guy go into the other room, and they'll hear her screaming for 30 minutes and then come back out like bloodied and bruised, and you're like, bro, did that guy just beat the shit out of her? And the conservatives will look you in the eye, dead in the eye, into the ovals of your soul. They will look into you, and they will say, I didn't actually see it happen, did you? How can you improve that? Like, why would you assume that? Do you even fucking know? Like, they're the most shameless bad faith people need it. They're shameless.
One of the tactics of grifters and their parrots is to attempt to...
It goes even further, too. The most common quote I've heard conservatives say lately about Trump is that they grade Trump on a curve. I assume they hope that their own fans and the people they're talking to won't look up what that term means. It means you literally have different standards for evaluating Trump compared to anyone else. That they evaluate Trump by a completely different set of standards than anyone else. They admit to being hypocritical about Trump, but word it in a way that doesn't sound like that. You know what I mean?
To maintain an air of plausible deniability, so that when they are criticized for their bigotry, they can hide behind deflections. In my previous video, I brought up one of them, the "but Ripley from Alien" defense. In short, these people try to use examples that match...
These guys had, like, these movies and stuff in their childhood they grew up with before they were invested in this weird culture war shit, like the original Star Wars prequels that they grew up in they were kids in the early 2000s. Many of them grew up on Alien if they're an older, and so they really liked Ripley as a character. They really liked these movies that today you couldn't release without these same content creators shitting on because they grew up with them. They watched them. They didn't obsess over the race or gender of characters because they were kids. They were like, oh, Spider-Man. Now they're grown up, though, and they're like invested in politics, and they can't help but see race, politics, and a message in everything that they see, or at least they claim to see it. I honestly think the critical drinker and people like him don't really believe like half the stuff. I think the politics they believe in, and it's the arguments is where it's a grift. I don't think they believe that these movies are as woke as they claim half the time. I think it's just, here's a new popular thing. Now I need to like break down whether or not it's woke and whether or not my audience should watch it. Now, of course, if it's a movie like Top Gun Maverick, a movie that is starring Tom Cruise, the real-life American Psycho, then they love it. They're like, oh, go watch this movie. Go watch this movie now. Go, please. Spend your money on this movie. Don't donate to me. Watch Top Gun Maverick. If it's some, like, straight white male guy who's got, like, some really shady IRL shit going on, who's known for being more on the conservative side, they will, like, beg their audience to go support that movie. It's genuinely hilarious. But any other piece of media that's popular, if it's not explicitly something the right can claim, they do this weird, like, well, I guess you could say the movie has some woke elements in it, but for the most part, it avoids that and just focuses on being a good movie. But you definitely need to be aware of these small woke elements. It's like, it's so bizarre. It reminds me of like a softer version of those like curator lists people make on Steam to say, here's the woke games you shouldn't play.
or are similar to the identity of a group that they regularly target to pretend they are not prejudiced against that group. In political discourse, this is probably more well known as, "but I have black friends." We know that doesn't actually work as a defense because we have actual history of slave owners falling in love with their slaves and that male sexists still love their female family members. But when you have sustained and consistent campaigns against certain groups of people, it's entirely reasonable to suggest you have a dislike for those groups. For Will, one of those groups is women. Let's examine one of the most egregious cases of Will's attempts at plausible deniability.
Man, I wonder if he'll... I've never checked how many Critical Drinker videos there are on Brie Larson or Captain Marvel. Geeks and Gamers has made hundreds. The Quartering might have made over 1,000 videos in the last 5 years on Brie Larson and or Captain Marvel. It's so many videos that if you look up The Quartering Captain Marvel or The Quartering Brie Larson, you'll scroll for multiple pages through results, and then the results will stop. YouTube will start showing you unrelated results, and you'll think, oh, it's over. It's okay, cool, that's all the videos. Maybe it's not as many as I thought, but then if you scroll to the next page, YouTube resumes showing you results that are related, and if you keep clicking, they'll keep going, and then you'll get little islands where YouTube stops showing you results, but then if you keep clicking, you'll find more. What you really have to do is go to their channels and then search either Brie Larson or Captain Marvel and then scroll. Oh my god. Like, do you guys want to see one of the most blatant grifts ever? Hold on. I wonder if he's purged a bunch of these videos. The Quartering. I misspelled his name, so funnily enough, all the videos that came up were videos dunking on him.
Alex.
So this is his current video backlog of just Brie Larson wait, what? Okay, so this is his backlog of just exposing, quote-unquote, Brie Larson alone. So these are all videos about Brie Larson on the Quarterings channel. All of these are Brie Larson videos or Captain Marvel videos. I only searched Brie Larson, so these aren't even the ones that just say Captain Marvel. Oh, he's purged quite a few. This is where it stops. He's purged quite a few. I wonder if they continue if we keep scrolling. I bet they do. If we keep scrolling, it goes back to showing ones with her in them. Now let's see what happens if you search Captain Marvel. Oh, wait. The newest thumbnail has Brie Larson in it in his newest video. Captain. Let's see what happens if I search Captain. Just Captain. Oh, this is better, actually. Here, I think I can unlock my mouse. Do this? Okay, yeah. All of these about Captain Marvel. All these are about Captain Marvel. Still seeing Captain Marvel in these thumbnails. Still seeing her. Still seeing her. Obviously, this is the Quartering and not the Critical Drinker, but they're friends. And they make the same exact kind of content. It's just the right-wing, like, anti-woke grift content. These people mean nothing. You think he's got a crush or something? No, he does. He absolutely does. There's some level of sexual obsession, but those videos also get a lot of views, and that's why he keeps making them. It's because he's a grifter who just wants views. And Captain Marvel, for some reason, Brie Larson, is a woman that men online just cannot stand, and the Quarterings viewers really hate her, and they click on his videos about her every time. So if he can make any video even vaguely about her, he does.
On January 5th, 2020, Drinker uploaded a video about The Mandalorian. In it, he had this to say about Gina Carano.
But for the life of me, I'll never understand why they cast Gina Carano.
Oh, yes! Oh, we're finally getting the backtrack on Gina Carano. Oh my god. Oh, yes. Who remembers the anger over the tough woman in The Mandalorian, and then she came out as a conservative and got fired by Disney for being like an anti-vaxxer and saying shit like, unvaxxed people are like Jews during the Holocaust, and then all these people were like, we love Gina Carano, actually. She's the best. Bring her back. And then she starred in Ben Shapiro's right-wing anti-woke movie that made like $8 or something at the box office.
She's big and burly, and she obviously knows what she's doing when it comes to the fight scenes, but she's a fucking cage fighter, not an actor. Watching her trying to emote is almost as painful as watching Brie Larson trying to be...
Remember, by the way, guys, this footage of the show is not like Birdman, by the way. This is The Critical Drinker. Something The Critical Drinker does is any piece of media that he covers, he desaturates the fuck out of it and or reduces the resolution, so there's no color, there's no detail. He does a bunch of little tricks to reduce the quality of like the picture of any video or movie or show that he's covering, so that when people who haven't seen it are seeing clips of it, they can't even be tempted into watching it for themselves by good visuals, right? I noticed he did this the most with Rings of Power. Like, he zoomed in those scenes, like made them grainy and then desaturated them. Because if you even show a screenshot of Rings of Power, someone's going to be like, you know, I've heard the show kind of sucks, but I might just watch it to see the visuals and get stoned. And then they might, like, if they do that, they might realize the show's good. And then it's like, wait a second, The Critical Drinker lied to me. Like, they do this all the time. They do it especially when it comes to, like, analyzing a fight in a show or something like that. They love to, like, pixelate it, slow it down, and reduce every visual aspect to make it look as bad as possible. Might be to get around copyright. I promise you it's not, Chris. I promise you it's not. Watch any other media review YouTubers online. They don't do this. They don't do this. They don't. Watch, like, actual, like, big like video essay videos where they, like, cover a movie and show a bunch of full-on clips of the movie, video clips of the movie. The Birdman did that earlier. Did you notice something about the clips of the movie the Birdman showed earlier in the video of Spider-Verse? They're not fucked with. Look at that. They're not these scenes aren't fucked with for the sake of copyright. No one else other than conservative chud YouTubers covering media they hate does this. It is a deliberate strategy that they employ with media that they hate when they cover it, where they make it look blurry and unintelligible so the visuals can't even appeal to the audience that watches their videos that don't watch the shows that they're covering in the first place. They're trying to make sure their fans don't even feel the slightest tinge of desire to go watch the thing they're shit talking for themselves. And visuals play an aspect in that. So if a show is well put together on a visual level, that translates to the eyes, even if you're watching a video shit-talking it. Have you ever seen, like, a video calling out a game as being bad, but the gameplay they're showing makes you want to play the game, and you end up playing it and liking it and disagreeing with the premise of the video? They're trying to avoid that from happening. That's what they're trying to keep from happening with their own audiences, is people being like, well, yeah, I heard the show sucks, but it looks good, so I'm willing to look at it. They don't want their fans to do that, because then they might get called out on their shit.
Watching Brie Larson trying to be funny. Oh well, it could have been worse. They could have cast Ronda Rousey.
Pretty obvious.
I cannot believe Critical Drinker brought up fucking Brie Larson right after we went into how, like, his ilk are obsessed with her. That is amazing.
Dislikes this person and thinks she shouldn't be an actor. Fair enough. However, later that year, Gina got into a string of spats on Twitter that had her facing accusations of racism and bigotry, and she was subsequently fired by Disney. Then, a few months later, Drinker makes a video about Gina so embarrassing, you just have to hear it to believe it.
Gather round, dear viewer, as I tell you a tale. It's the tale of a woman who stood tall in the face of jealousy, cowardice, hatred, and vengeance, and dared to utter a single word. No. It's the story of the girl who wouldn't back down. She fought and won many battles and earned herself great acclaim. But the young woman had her eyes set on a higher goal.
Dude, the way these people glaze for anyone or anything that agrees with them politically is it's just so embarrassing. It's the most shameless embarrassing when you've seen what they actually, well, what they pretended to believe, like, months before, what they supposedly actually thought. But then watching them glaze someone simply because they seem to agree with their values, or more likely than not because the Gina Carano thing was a big story in the conservative sphere, and he wants to grift off of the money of people who are interested in the topic.
And eventually, she gave up her life of fighting, travelling instead to the great kingdom of Hollywood to seek fame and glory as an actor instead. And as it turns out, her long years of training and fighting served her well, and soon she was chosen for many roles on the silver screen. Her triumph was cemented when the king and queen chose her to play a soldier, fighting amongst the stars themselves. Her fame was growing fast, but sadly, so was her list of enemies.
This is a flip-flop so insane, it could put Crocs and Birkenstock out of business. And
man, I hope Birdman knows about the House of the Dragon flip-flop. Holy shit. This is one of my favorites. I show it all the time. Critical Drinker, House of the Dragon. One of my favorite examples of Critical Drinker and his ilk not believing in anything. Open image in new tab. Thank you for bringing it up quickly. Google image search results. This is the same stream, by the way. The original title, when House of the Dragon was announced, was Drinkers Chasers, Why Nobody Cares About House of the Dragon. And when the show came out, the night it did, he tweeted, well, he went with the nobody cares narrative that they like to do about a thing that's going to supposedly be woke and awful, that it's going to go woke, go broke. Genuinely had no idea House of the Dragon had even started. There seems to be no buzz around it at all. The next morning, this comes out. HBO calls House of the Dragon its biggest premiere ever with nearly 10 million US viewers. And that day, Critical Drinker changed the title of the 2-month-old VOD for a stream where they talk about how nobody cares about House of the Dragon, it's going to suck, to Drinkers Chasers House of the Dragon trailer breakdown. When reality doesn't support your grift, you have to improvise. I love this image as well. I love whoever put this together. They're liars. They don't believe. They're pretending to believe in things, and that's so upsetting. He did the same thing with Prey, the Predator movie Prey, where he tried to shit on it, but then it ended up being extremely successful, and he had to walk it back, and it was like really pathetic because the movie was still starred a female lead, surviving as all of the male characters die, but the movie was so good and did so well that he couldn't not look deranged shitting on it, and he couldn't not make it obvious that he was just mad about a female lead. So he continues to like say, oh, it's definitely got some woke elements, but he can't really fully say it's bad and you shouldn't watch it. It's the most I love when these guys are forced to walk their shit back. It's so pathetic that they become like little sad, like, oh, Roy, I hope you forgot what I said the other day.
This isn't even the only video he's made about her. Listen to this nonsense.
One of the problems with hiring strong independent women to work at your company, instead of the usual assemblage of soft, entitled, like-minded corporate drones that have never had an original thought in their entire lives, is that they don't always think, say, or do the things that you want them to. Case in point, Gina Carano, a former women's MMA fighter turned actor who was brought in to play Cara Dune on The Mandalorian, and at first, all seemed well. The show was a success, and Carano's character soon became a fan favourite. Unfortunately, she began to ruffle feathers behind the scenes at Disney Lucasfilm by refusing to spout the same politically acceptable talking points as everyone else at the company, and even dared to express some conservative political views at times.
Mind you, these political views were the claim that being someone who is unwilling to get vaccinated, because being an anti-vaxxer is akin to being a Jew during the Holocaust in Nazi Germany, is what she said. He won't. These people, when they want to defend someone, like I've seen a lot of YouTubers try to defend Notch, for example. And I can tell a conservative YouTuber in the Minecraft sphere when they try to defend Notch, and they say, he tweeted some controversial things. And then Microsoft, in response, they go into like the whole thing that Microsoft did. And it's like, oh, okay. So you're not willing to actually state what this person you're defending said that you're defending, because you know that even repeating it destroys your argument because it's undefendable. A really good example of people practicing this was when I made my video about Brandon Herrera. For those who don't know, the popular gun YouTuber Brendan Herrera, when he was like in his early 20s, I'm guessing, based on the video, was a member of and did an ad for a Confederate Heritage Society, where he did a video like as an ad for people to join this Confederate Heritage Society, where he talks about how they're going to learn about the war of quote unquote Northern aggression, learning the true history of the Civil War. He's a Confederate, like the biggest gun YouTuber in the world, Brandon Herrera, is a Confederate, or was a Confederate at one point. And this video of him got dug up, and I covered it in a video. And the Brandon Herrera fans in the responses, which are generally conservative considering he is a gun YouTuber, they were defending what he said, but I noticed something funny was that none of them were willing to repeat what he said in that video. None of them were willing to repeat that he had made a video for a Confederate Heritage Society calling it the War of Northern Aggression, the Civil War. They weren't willing to repeat that he had said that. They were only willing to say, you're going after him for saying stuff that he said so long ago. You know, or they'd say, you're blowing this out of... They wouldn't even acknowledge the things that he said that they're defending. They'll just very vaguely refer to it. A lot of conservative types are like this. They will defend behavior they know is so shameful, they won't even repeat the thing that they're defending. They'll only refer to it vaguely, kind of in the same way someone who's ashamed about something they did apologizes for something they're not really sorry for. They'll just, like, vaguely refer to it, you know, without outright stating what they did wrong, and you can tell it's a bullshit apology. That's what they do. But when it comes to, like, talking about and making excuses and doing apologia for things or people.
He spoke about this person like she was a dog, outright saying she can't even act. But as soon as she spouts nonsense and conspiracy theories and gets fired for her troubles, he's writing poems and puff pieces.
But for the life of me, I'll never understand why they cast Gina Carano. I mean, she's big and burly, and she obviously knows what she's doing when it comes to the fight scenes, but she's a fucking cage fighter, not an actor. Watching her trying to emote is almost as painful as watching Brie Larson trying to be funny.
This man is shameless.
I genuinely wonder if in the clips he shows the show, when he's talking her up, if the show isn't all blurred.
The problems with hiring strong independent women to work at your company instead of the usual assemblage of soft, entitled, like-minded corporate drones that have never had an original thought in their entire lives is that they don't always think, say, or do the things that you want them to. Case in point, Gina Carano, a former women's MMA fighter turned actor who was brought in to play Cara Dune on The Mandalorian, and
Okay, it's still awful quality. He still seems to well, he is shit-talking the show, but yeah, I was just curious.
About his obvious disdain for strong female characters. You know, look over here and pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Has spoken! Who are you?
Speaking of agendas, the Barbie movie and his subsequent analysis evaporated any hope I had left for this man's...
God, that was such a great situation where a movie that's so against the aesthetic, vibe, and content of what these guys claim Hollywood needs to go back to doing if it doesn't want to die, quote unquote. The Barbie movie, the opposite of what all these dudes talk up as being what can save Hollywood, ends up being the biggest blockbuster of the year, pretty much. And everybody watches it. It's one of the most successful movies ever. And this guy, who's obviously made a bunch of videos shit-talking before it even comes out, had to walk it back. It's really funny when they have to walk it back. They did this with the Mario movie. God, watching Shadiversity cope over people posting clips of what he said about the Mario movie before it came out, after he uploaded his video praising it, because it ended up being beloved and popular. Like, there are some content creators that are not as slick at it as the critical drinker, and Shadiversity is another example.
Integrity. Listen to how he sums up the marketing of the film and then his reading of the actual film's release.
Now, before I dive into this review properly, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the hard work and genius PR campaign of the Warner Brothers marketing department. You guys really pulled off a miracle with this one, successfully duping all of us, including me, into believing that Barbie was going to be just another colourful, light-hearted, easygoing family comedy with some cheeky self-aware humour, ironic meta-gags, and probably capped off with a blandly inoffensive female empowerment message about girls learning the value of their own potential. What none of us expected was 114 minutes of spiteful, bitter, mean-spirited, borderline unhinged hatred of men and everything even vaguely associated with them. Barbie is like the deformed...
This is a beyond deranged interpretation of the movie. Like, you have to be insane and looking for, like, man-hate and everything to interpret the Barbie movie this way. Like, did he just, like... He didn't watch the movie, I'm sure, but, like, did he just, like, plug his ears during every moment Ken was on scene or something? I don't know. Like, Ken's whole arc is like, him becoming like a good man. I don't know what else to say. Xander Hall, the directors of the Barbie movie and Oppenheimer are friends, and they did that on what they did on purpose of the saying of Barbenheimer. Okay, you mistyped that pretty much, but I get what you mean. Yeah, the directors are friends, and they did the whole Barbenheimer thing. Yeah, I remember that.
Mutated rage child of Captain Marvel, Ghostbusters 2016, and She-Hulk. It is pure...
My God, like the desperate... That's like the reverse of Remember When. Like that is the chud hate content version of Remember When. Remember when we hated She-Hulk and that was on TV? Remember when we hated the Ghostbusters movie? Remember when we hated Captain Marvel? You guys loved watching me talk about how bad those were. Remember that? This is just like that, guys. It's like the reverse of, like, Remember When good thing. It's Remember When bad thing, because these guys make their entire living off of shit-talking popular stuff.
Brain cancer in movie form, and I was genuinely shocked by the sheer, undisguised contempt this film has towards 50% of the human population.
Besides the fact that this is one of the most hyperbolic, nonsensical summations of this movie, how could he have possibly come to that conclusion for the film's marketing? It was plainly...
Aren't women 51% of the world's population, and men 49%? Could have sworn that's the percentage. I might be wrong, though.
Obvious that Margot's Barbie was the main character and that she would face an existential crisis.
Do you guys ever think about dying?
On top of that, they show Barbie's feet going flat, suggesting that the film would be clearly feminist in nature, as feminists have been arguing against heels for decades.
The high heels
the
thing,
marketing material also shows Barbie entering the real world and experiencing sexual assault, and I can...
Like, the movie was obviously going to be pretty progressive from the get-go. Like, I mean, I don't think anybody thought this movie was gonna, like, blindside everybody with some conservative messaging. It was pretty obvious that if this movie had any message, it would be one that could be associated with progressive values. So the idea that there was some sort of, like, rug pull is hilarious. Wasn't Critical Drinker shit-talking the Barbie movie before it came out? Or did he jump on the hate bandwagon after it came out? Because usually it's the reverse with these guys. Usually they shit-talk a popular thing before it comes out, it ends up being popular and well-received, and they have to flip-flop. But sometimes it's the reverse, like with the Fallout show, where some of them were shit-talking the Fallout show before it even came out, and then it did come out, it ended up being really well-received, and they weren't willing to walk it back. And tried to run with the it failed in its woke narrative and did not succeed with it because the show's so beloved.
Only conclude that Drinker's media literacy is questionable at best. To belabor this point, he's been caught changing the titles of his videos after a media property releases to hide his terrible perception of marketing material.
Yes! Yes! He included it. Let's go. Oh, this is my favorite one. God, the Critical Drinker is such a little piece of shit. Such a coward.
And if all that wasn't enough to prove that Mr. Jordan has the integrity of a sandcastle, here's something that was brought to my attention. On one of Drinker's live streams, he attributed a false quote to Isabella Merced about the failure of Madame Web.
Some of the stars of the film have got theories about why that is, and one of them is right here. Isabella Merced? Is that the word? Merced?
Sure. Yeah.
She said it failed for one simple reason. For the same reason that the Marvels or Bird of Prey failed, because the male audience still hides a deep contempt for everything that is starring strong, independent women.
Oh, God. The truth is the truth, I guess.
Sure. I mean, that's definitely the reason Birds of Prey failed and the Marvels. It wasn't because they were bad films that no one wanted. For sure.
Isabella was, of course, inundated with hate from parrots that took these quotes at face value because why would grifters lie?
One of the most upsetting things about these content creators is a big, like the exhaust from their, like their burning of the dirty fuel that is hate bait online. The exhaust that comes from it, the pollution they create, is death threats and hate towards the actors, the real people in the media that they're covering. I don't know if you've known this, but pretty much every actor, director, like every person who has any public involvement with the show, The Rings of Power, has been under constant hate and death threats. Every word they say publicly that could be a response to the hate the show gets, hyper-analyzed and posted around and used as justification for the death threats and hate. And that has been going for years now, since The Rings of Power started and the actors were announced. The actors who are women and people of color get the most shit, as you can imagine, because of the motivations, the people who are the most mad about this stuff. Another person who's been getting this shit for a while is, I think her name is Laura Bailey. She played Abby in The Last of Us 2, if I'm not mistaken. She is still, to this day, getting death threats and hate from people that are upset and think that she is the actress who portrayed a character they consider to be woke, and I'm pretty sure some of them still think is trans, because they don't actually engage with the media that they hate on, for killing a character in a game that they didn't even play. There are still countless people sending death threats to the actress who played Abby in The Last of Us 2. And that came out in, 2019, 2020 or something? Like, it's literally been 4 or 5 years now, still getting death threats. Everyone's been saying to whoever plays Abby in Season 2 of The Last of Us, we all wish her a very non-existent social media presence.
To them. She then had to come out and deny these clearly false allegations, but by then, the damage was already done.
Yeah,
to date,
the actress who plays Skylar in Breaking Bad still gets death threats, yep.
There has been no update, no retraction, no public apology on Twitter from Will Jordan for spreading this quote, and that's because he has a vested interest in seeing the culture war proliferate in media discourse, as this is profitable for him. Even if he didn't know the quote was fake.
Money these
this shows
people
the lack of research and effort.
These people have unfathomable amounts of money. Like, I hate to say it, guys, but I don't think that even at the peak of like where I could reach as a YouTuber, I'll ever be anywhere near as successful as these guys are. These guys like hate is so monetarily effective. Something that these guys will always have above normal content creators that just make media like videos and review stuff, or even people that cover them or respond to them, is the fact that their hate mongering gets way more clicks than any other form of content. Hate just gets clicks online. Hate makes the internet go round, you know? I think shows like this are paid by Russia. No, I don't think so, honestly. I really don't think so. Zan almost let the sex cult confession slip. True. No, I don't think these guys are paid by Russia. I just think it's really just people who recognize an easy grift online and they take it.
Puts into his work. No discernment, no ability to perform an investigation, and hastily attributes an obviously fake quote in a concerted effort to confirm his biases. Why would you take anything he says seriously at this point? How can you trust he's done the homework?
Oh yeah, if you guys want to know how long this has been around, Ian McKellen got insane amounts of hate back in the early 2000s when it was announced he, a gay man, would be playing Gandalf. Not that Gandalf would be gay, not just simply that a gay man would play Gandalf, got him death threats and hate. There are old responses that people can dig up to how Ian McKellen responded, and he responded very politely and very like he took the high road, but he also did a really good job of like responding. Like his response was very scathing too, but it was also very high road, and I like that about it. But like this shit has been happening since there were people online, racists online and bigots online, to get mad about new media. This goes back to the old forum days. People have been doing this.
This is not the first time he's been caught manipulating a narrative. The YouTuber Pillar of Garbage exposed Drinker for lying about scenes in Glass Onion because Drinker has a political gripe with Rian Johnson, the director of Glass Onion and The Last Jedi, a film he and his ilk have pilloried for the past 7 years.
What I really love is that you cannot pin. I really don't think you can pin the new Star Wars movies that Rian Johnson. I think he only worked on 2, maybe 1. I don't think you can pin The Last Jedi as being bad because of Rian Johnson. Do people know what else Rian Johnson has been involved with? Like, do they know? Like, Rian Johnson directed, I'm pretty sure was the director of Ozymandias, the Breaking Bad episode. You know, the Breaking Bad episode. The highest rated episode ever of one of the highest rated shows ever, considered to be by many the best episode of television, period. Rian Johnson literally made Ozymandias. Yes, Ozymandias, the episode of Breaking Bad, considered to be, by most that have seen it, the best episode of television, period. Like, the best single episode of television. Rian Johnson was a big part of that. The idea that Rian Johnson is some hack or awful or is responsible for any perceived issues with that, I just don't believe it. Like, knowing what he's also been a part of, like the resume that dude has, it's like, nah, dude, nah. It'd be like trying to claim Hideo Kojima sucks and is bad at directing because he was part of like one movie that ended up being bad. It would be like, you'd have to, the only safe assumption would be, clearly Hideo Kojima did not have a big effect on this. You know what I mean? Like, it's outright deranged when you know what Rian Johnson's like resume looks like to try and claim he's a bad director. He was actually a really reasonable and good pick. I don't know why these sequel movies ended up being, well, I know why. There were choices made for the story that were just bad. Finn should have been the main character. He was the guy who we first saw in the advertising and marketing material for The Force Awakens. Everybody, like, immediately, like, got, like, affiliated with Finn as, like, the guy who we see at the start of the first trailer. He is the first person we see in any of the marketing material. It really should have been Rey if they didn't want to give people the impression that Finn would be a more important character. And Finn got absolutely sidelined, and no one liked that. The franchise would have just objectively been more interesting if it was about Finn, an ex-stormtrooper, rebelling and becoming a Jedi. That's just a more interesting story, and it's what everyone was expecting and wanted, and then they didn't end up being that, and everyone had, like, that base level of disappointment they had to get over. That really was my biggest issue with these movies.
Because of perceived wokeness. Here's a clip.
The example Drinky gives for Rian Johnson's blatant rewriting is the scene where Blanc and, as we later see, Helen spot Duke's voyeurism.
Batista's watching his girlfriend supposedly having an affair with Miles.
Oh, did you notice it, by the way? Did you notice that thing I kept telling you about? He does it differently, depending on the video, and sometimes stacks them.
Here's a clip.
Did you notice this? So here is the movie as it actually looks, Glass Onion, being shown by Pillar of Garbage, because there's absolutely no excuse for what Critical Drinker does. It's not for copyright avoidance. Other YouTubers are able to show clips, even with sound, from these movies as long as they're fair use. So there's absolutely no excuse not to just show the movie as it is. But then watch when it switches to the Critical Drinkers video, what happens to the visuals.
Drink he gives for Ryan Johnson's blatant rewriting is the scene where Blanc and, as we later see, Helen spot Duke's voyeurism.
Batista's what?
That's when it switches to the Critical Drinkers video. This is how he shows the movie, as opposed to how it really looks, which is like this and like this. If this is the shot of the movie that you see, where you can just tell, look at the lighting here. Look how good the lighting is. I mean, granted, it's a scene where Batista's jacking off in the bushes, but even then, look how good the lighting is. The set is good. The camera is using the rule of thirds. Like, there's a lot of things happening in this image that depict to somebody that this is a competently made movie. And so if you're a guy who has not seen this movie and you're watching a YouTuber giving you an opinion to pretend like you've seen the movie and to pretend like you have an original opinion on it, and you see this shot, you might think, oh, this movie actually visually looks pretty good. It looks competently made. Maybe it's better than I thought. And they might end up watching it, which is why Critical Drinker, in every video where he covers a piece of media that you're not supposed to like,
Helen spot Duke's voyeurism.
Batista's what?
We see it like this, where he saturates or desaturates any color or vibrancy out of the shot, makes it harder to see what's happening, makes it easier to nitpick just because it's easier to shit on something that looks like garbage. And so a big part of what the Critical Drinker does is he edits the things he's covering to look like garbage. He edits them to look as garbage as he says they are. Because if the look doesn't match the claim of what it looks like, then his claims about this, his lies, I should say, might not flow as well. I really wish more people called out the blatant dishonesty and the desaturating and pixelation of the things that he covers, just to make the things that he's covering look shittier.
Watching his girlfriend supposedly having an affair with Miles only to be observed by Blanc. Now look at the later version of this exact same scene. Notice how Helen's been added in here when she totally should have been visible before.
Except no, that isn't true. There's a reason the Drinker plays these clips on mute. Let me put the sound back on for you. That was the first time we see this. There's a close shot of Duke, then we hear the twig snap, and then we pull back to a shot revealing Blanc. Here's the scene as we're shown it later on.
He's edited the scene deceptively to make you think he's caught a blatant and obvious mistake in the movie's creation. Because surely if the movie's making mistakes as big as blatantly changing a scene we've already seen and claiming something happened and we haven't, it's easy to convince someone, oh, wow, this movie must suck if they're overlooking issues that big. But it's completely false editing. He's lying and editing the scene to make the lie true.
We start with this slightly wider shot, revealing Blanc and Helen, then Helen leaves, causing that sound, and Duke turns round. This point is the moment we saw earlier on, and there's a very obvious, very obtrusive sound cue, the sole purpose of which is to communicate precisely this. Look, you can enjoy the way moments like this toy with the audience perspective, complementing the film's themes, these ideas of how we see and how we falsely composite and rationalize these perceptions away from the truth, away from what's really plainly shown to us, or you can dislike it. But what you can't do is lie about how the film constructs moments like these on a mechanical level. And that's what the Drinker does here.
Well, you can lie. Well, that's the thing, though. You can, and you can make a ton of money from it. YouTube has no rules against it. You'll never be, punished by YouTube for it. You're allowed to spread misinfo on the platform. If it's something like this, you're allowed to make millions and millions and millions off of lying to people about media and doing so to push a political narrative. You're allowed to do that. There's literally nothing you can do to stop that. In fact, the emphasis on the nothing you can do to stop it is on the fact that even Birdman, even Pillar of Garbage, YouTubers who are, I think that Pillar of Garbage might be bigger than me now. He should be. Even me, we're fractions of fractions of fractions of the size of the average conservative grifter channel, most certainly some of the largest, like Critical Drinker. Nobody in this sphere calling out the Critical Drinker will be able to reach an audience as big as the Critical Drinker does, and nothing about that will change unless, like, YouTube as a platform fundamentally changes.
Cap off his video to build into this last point.
Why would Drinker do that? Is he incompetent, or is he a blatant liar? These are the only two choices you have, and both of them are damning for his reputation. And yet, he doesn't seem to care, because I guess his followers don't seem to care. I mean, he publicly demonstrates that he can't keep up with basic logic all the time. Look at this tweet from Star Wars Holocron. They are very obviously making the point that sometimes a show's first season isn't always where it finally ends up, with a couple examples, including The Clone Wars and Breaking Bad. When Will saw this, I mean, how do you fail at understanding the point this hard? This is one of two things. He either understands the point being made, but is attempting to misrepresent the point to, again, galvanize an already volatile audience against a—
To be fair, a Star Wars property that this guy fucking hates, and hates the director for, directed the best episode of Breaking Bad, unanimously believed to be the best episode of Breaking Bad. I wonder, like, how he would react if I said, what do you think of Ozymandias? You know, Rian Johnson directed and wrote that, right? Like, I'd be curious to see if he even knows what Ozymandias is. Because, like, how funny would it be if he's not even seen Breaking Bad? How funny would it be if this guy whose job is to review movies and shows doesn't watch any movies or shows and just pretends to? Because the content he makes, I would totally believe he's not seen anything that he criticizes. I'd totally believe this guy doesn't watch shit. He doesn't watch any of this stuff. I'd believe it.
A contentious product, thereby sending his parrots to harass this account, which actually fucking happened, or he doesn't understand the purpose of an analogy. Stupid people do this all the time. You'll say, well, fish swim, and—
Oh, and another aspect of this you'll notice, by the way, is that this tweet isn't made by the official showrunners. It wasn't made by somebody calling out the Critical Drinker. This is an account that is just a Star Wars fan account that posts fan material about anything Star Wars related. It's like an actual fan account. They don't, like, hate a bunch of Star Wars stuff. And that can't be allowed by the grifters. You'll notice I noticed this big time when it came to Rings of Power, because it was something that I really liked that was really getting run over by the Chud train. And I noticed that, like, you could not find communities online to talk about or enjoy the show without them having been overrun by people who hate it. The official subreddit for the show was made as a hate subreddit. So if you were trying to find discussion of the show on Reddit, what would come up first would be a dedicated hate subreddit, which is stolen r/the Rings of Power. That's a dedicated hate subreddit. The name of the show has been stolen on Reddit to be a dedicated hate subreddit. So it's like these communities are so dedicated in their hate sometimes, and in like fighting against the thing they consider woke or to be a sign of like the woke end times, that they will ensure you're not allowed to publicly enjoy a piece of media that they hate online. Apparently this happened to the Last of Us 2 subreddit as well, where it got taken over. They will take over communities and ensure that you're not allowed to be a person who's able to go online and have a community of people that also like that thing, because they will raid any fan community and like make it unenjoyable.
Olympic sprinters run, with the underlying logic being how they locomote.
And that was the goal here. The quote tweet and everything was to send his fans to mass harass this fan post in order to make sure that this fan community understands that there are consequences for daring to say anything positive about this show that I'm sure they have completely reasonable and non-race related reasons for disliking.
And the stupidest person you know will say, "Did you just compare a fish to an Olympian?" And this is exactly why analogies are on IQ tests. But I'm willing to be charitable to Will and suggest it's the former, that he knows the point that's being made but is misrepresenting it to fit the narrative he's trying to push.
That is the case,
I mean,
yes.
The alternative is to suggest he's low IQ. And I would never do that. His Twitter alone is an embarrassment of narrative pushes.
I think he's a very low IQ, unimpressive dude who's just found a really easy, effective, and shameless low, like, you have to have a very little sincerity and shame to do what he does, because he knows what he's doing. He must. You have to be a certain kind of person to do that type of content, I feel. So I imagine it's just he's a dumb guy who has little enough shame to make a type of content that is very profitable but very shameless. I think that's really what it is. I thought IQ wasn't a real factor. And it's a joke to call someone dumb. When people say someone's dumb, they say they're low IQ. It's just a saying, okay? Everyone knows that IQ is not a probability. Yeah, we get it, okay? It's just a joke, okay? It's just a saying. People just say low IQ and they mean dumb. Doesn't mean they literally mean the person has a low IQ.
From platform boosting known anti-black racists like Kang-Min Lee to even shit-talking PETA because he perceives them to be left-wing, I guess? I don't know. That last one was just amusing to me.
I mean, PETA does have a lot of problems. People don't like PETA, just in general. PETA's not a great organization, even at what they claim to want to do.
So I bring you back to this tweet. What do you honestly think he's saying here? So far, we've demonstrated he will lie or manipulate a narrative, use a member of a group that he regularly targets as a form of plausible deniability, that he clearly has issues with minority groups, and that he perceives women being in these roles to be a political push. Which of the humans in this image fits all that criteria? What this person does is not honest critique. He looks for ways he can jimmy in alt-right political talking points under the guise of being a movie reviewer. And I know his fan base doesn't want to believe that he is prejudiced against minority groups, but after everything you've seen here, if you're an honest person, you're at the very least asking questions. Why would he bring up conversations about race in films where that isn't the focus? Why would he lie and manipulate footage of a film made by a person that he politically disagrees with? Why is he spreading misinformation about a woman and attributing political positions to her? What does any of this have to do with film? This is because he's not a film reviewer. He's a political ideologue that complains almost exclusively about mainstream media to push rhetoric. In fact, you'll never see him talking about or promoting anything that's not mainstream unless it's an attempt at a narrative push. So yeah, he'll talk about Squid Game or Kingdom because they're mainstream, but do any of you believe he cares about Korean media at all? You know, because
No.
Korean women are probably some of the most feminist on earth, to the point that it heavily contributes to their birth rate decline and the swath of strong female protagonists that permeate Korean media properties? He has no idea because he can only regurgitate talking points against what's in the mainstream, because you can't grift on things people don't know about.
Like, K-dramas are really popular, if you don't know, and they all tend to feature female characters, and on top of that, like, female American audiences are big into them. So it's just really funny to me that Critical Drinker doesn't know this and talks about any foreign movie that's doing well or foreign show that's doing well as some, like, anti-woke thing because it didn't come out of Hollywood. It's so fucking funny.
This is why his review for season 4 of The Boys is what it is. He admits he hasn't even watched it, yet claims it has—
What? Oh my god, he admits it? Oh, brother, this guy fucking stinks. Holy shit. He admitted he didn't watch season 4 of The Boys in his Boys season 4 review. Oh my god.
destroyed its audience, his source being the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes.
So it was off to Rotten Tomatoes.
Remember, guys, the platform where they encourage their audiences, and anyone can do this, to review bomb something and create a perception of its reception, that is the ultimate and completely trustworthy source to get your reviews for media from. Only look at the IMDb user reviews is what they tell their audience. The reviews that are extremely easily affected by review bombing. In fact, are so frequently affected by review bombing that Rings of Power had a negative average review before it aired. Amazon had mistakenly, like 12 hours before Rings of Power came out and premiered so that people could watch it, made reviews open, and it had a, like, what was it, like 1.2 out of 10 or something, like average review score for like a week or a few days before the first episode came out, because the review bombers were so quick to leave their negative reviews before it was even physically possible to have seen the show. That's why these YouTubers always refer to the audience review scores on these websites like Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, where anyone can make 1,000 accounts and mass review bomb something. That is the only source of content review that these guys will tell their audience is safe and trustworthy.
For me to check out the reviews. Not the critic reviews, of course, because nobody in their right mind gives a shit what those
Yes! Yes! Oh my god! I swear I didn't pre-watch this, guys. I swear to God. This is my first time watching this video, and I haven't even seen the Critical Drinker video that we're seeing a clip from here.
fucking shills have got to say about anything anymore. I'm talking about the audience reviews, which is the only semi-reliable barometer for quality
Of course,
these days.
yes.
And
you can only trust the audience reviews on websites that allow you to make 1,000 accounts and mass review bomb something, and anyone can do this. The only trustworthy source, of course. Yes, yes.
Oh.
Besides the fact that TV show reviews on Rotten Tomatoes aren't verified, meaning they are subject to review bombs, why doesn't he keep this same energy with, oh, I don't know, The Marvels, Black Widow, or Quantumania?
Because the review score is high. That's why. That is why.
Movies that have pretty good audience scores. Seems like Drinker is the living embodiment of this meme, doesn't
Movie you like, I knew it was gonna be good. Ha, the critics say it's great, so it's great. Audience score is all that matters anyway. People don't know anything. I'll form my own opinion if everyone hates it. Movie you don't like. Ha, paid reviews and shills. Ha, the audience agrees this is trash. Ha, the critics agree this is trash. I knew this was trash all along.
it? Of course, he'll never come out and say, I don't want to see black people in lead roles, or I'm tired of female protagonists, like The Quartering stupidly did. It's because being that he's selling something, he has something to lose, so he has to communicate in dog whistles to maintain the facade.
Screenshot. Oh my god. What an amazing screen. Holy shit. What an amazing screenshot of a Critical Drinker video. What the fuck? Just randomly putting labels on all the random Padawans in the room. Female, alien, alien, female, 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 black. Female, 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 female. Oh my god, dude. Holy shit. What a great screenshot. There's just nothing better. I just want to post this screenshot on Twitter and see what kind of response. Well, I'm shadow banned on Twitter because it's a conservative platform now, but like, if I wasn't shadow banned on Twitter before Elon bought it, I would love to just post this screenshot and just see the responses, because this is all you need. This is just a hilarious image. Oh my god.
He has something to lose, so he has to communicate in dog whistles to maintain the facade of plausible deniability. And Will, I know you're watching, so let me finally address you directly. Film reviews are not your personal soapbox to air out your grievances with minority groups and those that—
Really? Does Critical Drinker watch videos on him? Is there a chance Critical Drinker has seen— Something I find really interesting is that Critical Drinker has never made a response to me, but YouTubers like Mahler have. So like Mahler, if you don't know, he's shown up in a lot of these clips because he's friends with all these folks and believes the same things as them, but he's even better at abstracting it than the Critical Drinker is. So like, you know, he's there present in every clip you hear of one of these dumbasses saying something retarded, but somehow he's not affiliated with any of that, I guess, even though he says, yes, and head nods to everything they say. But yeah, like there are tons of content creators in this sphere that do this kind of stuff, and they range from saying the quiet part out loud way too much, like The Quartering, to being extremely slick and sly about it, like the Critical Drinker, and even more so Mahler.
That advocate for them. It's irresponsible to your, my, and every other audience that consumes film and teaches them nothing about the art form. You create a hostile environment.
It's interesting because like Mahler's responded because like it's way easier to say, oh, what do you mean? What'd I say that was anti-woke? It's like, I mean, you got me there. You didn't say wokeness is evil, I guess. But with Critical Drinker, I feel that he's so blatant in his grift that he couldn't respond to anyone, or certainly do like a debate with anyone, because they would just bring up, hey, remember when House of the Dragon came out and you changed the title of your stream saying no one cares about it after it came out and ended up being one of the most viewed HBO premieres ever because you didn't want to look like a fucking idiot, because you just care about how people perceive your magical ability to predict whether or not media is going to be good, as if that's like a real thing. Like someone like Critical Drinker or The Quartering, they don't do debates because they're just so blatant. But I feel like content creators who are more sly about it, like Mahler's very smart about the anti-woke grift stuff, making sure that he knows how to appeal to that audience, always covering the things that they hate, but not outright saying the message or even things that are like vaguely referencing politics. It's a very effective strategy.
Environment for neutral people that may stumble across your slop, where they may assume that film criticism is full of people like you. You do a disservice to the craft and give the rest of film YouTube a bad name. I think I speak on behalf of every reasonable film reviewer out there. Go away now.
So fucking true, but he won't. He's making a shit ton of money. I don't know if you've seen, but he's got like a whole studio now. Critical Drinker does. They bought like a bar and they have a studio in the back and stuff. So it's like a Joe Rogan style, like big multi-million-dollar podcast setup type thing. We're going to slowly watch as like the average content creator on the right gets to be extremely high budget. And the gap is going to grow more and more as like lefty content creators are just dudes streaming in bedrooms like me. And we see as like every right-wing content creator across the board starts to get like just ridiculous amounts of high funding, like high production value shit. It's going to be a real problem. Xander Hall, what do you think of the Bullpup M1903 Springfield? I've never seen it before. If I have, I don't connect the name with it, but I know what a Bullpup is, and they're pretty neat. Bullpup shotgun. Mahler sucks along with channels like him. They do. They do. They do. I don't know, Zan. Nah. Lefty Jenna. Guys, if you think any online figures are like gonna reach the average, any left-wing online figures on average are going to reach the average level of success that right now the average conservative figure has reached online, you are delusional. Yeah, apparently Tim Pool was like demanding 400K per video from Russia or something. Like you guys need to understand, the left will never have the resources that the right has from the internet. The internet will never provide the resources that the right has because the right is running off of hate, and hate is just a much faster, quicker burning fuel online than anything else. The problem is it leaves a lot more damage than anything else. It's worth it, moment of sanity. I'm ready for it, but like the point is that we're always going to be fighting an uphill battle. Like don't ever expect that eventually the majority of people are going to recognize how dumb stuff like what the critical drinker says is and just like fall off with it. Like it's not I don't think that type of thought process will ever die off on its own, unfortunately. There's less money in being anti-capitalist. In general, yeah, but it's not even being anti-capitalist. I'm not even referring to the political sides, really, like left and right. It's the hate. It's the hate at the end of the day. More often than not, if you're a progressive content creator, you do not make your money off of people constantly burning with seething hatred against something or someone. Like, generally, that's not the case. But if you're a right-wing figure, your entire income is predicated on keeping people mad. Non-stop anger is entirely required to keep the income flowing. And so that's something that I don't know if the left, like it's both a downside for the right in that they always need to keep anger burning. They always have to keep the fire of anger fueled. But at the same time, it means that there's always a very strong fire burning. And there's always a lot of attention and whatnot. So, yeah. That's pretty much what I think like is going to continue to happen, though who knows, maybe generationally we'll see a phenomenon where like the people who watch this content are like, this is garbage, and they fall off of it. There have been trends like that in the past that end up getting really big, they're awful, and then for like 2 years later the entire generation of people who fell into that trend look back at it as cringe. So it's very possible that's what ends up happening with this right-wing anti-woke content. I would very much like to see that. As always, though, please go check out the Birdman, because that's whose video we just reacted to, and it was pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in chat. There should be a link to it pinned in the comments. If there's not, then just leave comments telling Ethan to do that. Sometimes he forgets, but usually he remembers, so just remind him, and he'll get to that. So, yeah. With that said, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like. It really helps a ton, no matter when, where, or what you're watching, even if you're watching the stream right now live. Seriously, likes go a long way. Every thumbs up boosts my content in the algorithm, practically twisting YouTube's arm into boosting my channel, so I really, really do appreciate it. Thank you. And you can also comment down below for a similar effect, and subscribe and ring the bell icon if you haven't already in order to turn on notifications so YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload a new video, because otherwise, trust me, they won't. And of course, if you want to see more from me on other platforms, you've got my social media, which are linked down below in the description you can follow, including joining my fan Discord. It is totally free. I host game events, call-in streams, and watch parties there. I may even be hosting a watch party there tonight after stream, but we may be doing it in the PV Discord as well. And on top of that, if you haven't already, maybe consider donating directly, just as many of you lovely chatters already have so far. If you want to support me financially, keep the lights on, all that good stuff, keep the water running, a roof above my head, electricity flowing through my wires, I guess. I don't know. Then consider donating, subscribing, and gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, and support me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, StreamElements, Patreon, or buying merch at the Streamlabs link down below. But regardless of how you support me, even if you're just lurking around and chilling out and you haven't even engaged or said anything, I really do appreciate you being here. And as always, have a good one.